The sport of fencing has a long and impressive lineage, with the first recorded images of a warrior holding a blade traced back to the birth of the Egyptian pyramids. Now, almost 4,700 years later, fencing has become a sport that is the purest essence of strategy, athleticism, grace, and style. Black Blades explores the proud tradition of African American fencing, its heritage, its heroes, and its future. Through an exploration of the past, we can understand and celebrate the rise of today's exciting and competitive African American fencers who are changing and driving the sport to new heights. The roots of African American fencing can be found all over the world: Cuba, Hungary, France, Russia, and of course, Africa. This scattering of souls began as the New World discovered the Dark Continent and its untapped source of labor. Soon, many Africans found themselves enslaved, far, far from their homeland. Though these brave people would eventually reclaim their freedom, racism would continue to plague them. One noted example would be Alexandre Dumas, legendary French swordsman and author of the classic novel, The Three Musketeers. Dumas was a quadroon and shared his grandmother's Haitian heritage. Despite all his talent and celebrated success, he struggled against prejudice every day.
Uriah Jones was the first African American to make the Olympic team. He was a professional boxer, and I remember he would tell me many stories when the team would go to France and Europe, and he couldn't stay at the same hotels that they stayed in.
However, change was inevitable, and U.S. fencing and its African American members would change with it.
I remember once I was walking down the street when I first started fencing, and someone asked me, "What do you have in the bag?" I said, "Fencing equipment." He said, "What kind of fences you put up? White kind of picket fences?" I said, "Yeah, those kind." Or I would say, "I have fencing equipment." So people would respond to me, "What you got? Watches, rings, what you got?" Fencing equipment. Today, when I walk down the street and tell people I have fencing equipment in the African American community, they actually say, "Oh, what do you got, that foil or that saber stuff?"
Soon, many more African American fencers joined Uriah Jones and made their presence known on the fencing strip, including national and Olympic champions like Dr. Ruth White, Ed Wright, Ed Ballinger, Tyrone Simmons, Peter Westbrook, and Ruby Watson.
And I got started fencing there when I went to NYU at 18 years old. Dr. Ruth White, that was my old friend, she had a part of my heart, and I hers. She was a great, great fencer. It was just so nice to see her become an Olympian, but also after that she became a doctor. So one good thing I see about the sport of fencing, most people that are successful in fencing, African Americans that are successful in fencing, most of the time are successful in life.
Despite its many victories, U.S. fencing was still in its infancy compared to the long and decorated history of the European schools. African American fencers found themselves challenging centuries of domination in the sport by Europeans from the East and the West. Still, fencers like Peter Westbrook, 13-time national champion, 6-time Olympian, and Olympic bronze medalist, were up to that challenge.
In this time, U.S. fencing wasn't so strong, but Peter was one of the best fencers who, make a big competition to European fencers.
When I first went to the Olympic Games, I said, holy gosh. When I first went into the fencing site, I said, holy gosh, so many white people. I don't see hardly any black people around. Where did they go? I'm the only one. And then I realized, well, fencing is a European sport. France, Germany, Hungary, Spain, Czechoslovakia. So I realized now, wow, well, Pete, this is the sport that you've chosen. And because of my skill level and my coach's skill level, we broke down so many barriers, and I just became friends with everybody in the world.
Peter Westbrook continued to stand tall among the ranks of American fencers. He was joined by a new generation of young blades who would go on to become members of many U.S. Olympic and world teams, including Olympians Mikhail Sankofa, Sharon Monclosier, Mark Smith, Bob Cottingham, and Peter Lewison, as well as world team members Don Anthony, Jerry Rodriguez, and Rothschild McGuire.
I got a chance to watch Mikhail since he was about 14 years old. I told everybody, watch that boy. He's going to be on an Olympic team one day. It's because of people like him that work for me at the foundation. There's a full-time coach that makes a difference in young people's lives. We look for people like me, but I'm not enough. We look for people like Mikhail. so that we can just continue to touch, transform, and save more lives.
Like Tiger Woods does with golf, he just opens up the world of golf to a new kaleidoscope of people, culturally, racially, etc. I think if you have not just African-American coaches, but more people of color getting involved in the sport, it'll just change the face of the sport.
So it's becoming more widespread in the community. So many inner city kids with talent. Can you imagine if we had Michael Jordan in fencing, if we had a Kobe Bryant in fencing? That kind of talent in fencing is what I'm hoping that African elite coaches will produce.
Champions on and off the fencing strip, these fierce athletes looked beyond their own accomplishments and saw fencing as a way to provide hope and exchange street violence for teamwork and pride, sharing the opportunity to help others improve their lives through the same sport that they themselves are so passionate about.
The coaches that I admire most are the coaches that do it for the love of the sport. One of the greatest coaches that I've known was my own coach, Csaba Eltes, an Hungarian master. He used to give free, private lessons if he saw that you loved it and you had the talent.
I remember looking up to Peter as being such a strong role model out there for me, because there wasn't very many of us. There was Peter Westbrook, there was Mikhail Lofton, Bob Cottingham. There was just a few, but they were all at the top. So I think that really helped keep me interested and sort of shrugging off the opposition, which is like, oh, what are you doing that for? Why would you be doing that? You know, you should be playing basketball or doing something else.
I think more community-based programs need to be developed in the United States. The reason I say that, in a lot of ways, I see kind of like an elitism forming in United States fencing, and it's becoming more and more expensive for people to get involved in the sport. One of the things that we wanted to do in establishing the Peter Westbrook Foundation is to knock down those barriers, and then you'll see the face of the sport change even more dramatically. Right now, we're the only program in the United States who funds people, who pays for club dues, lessons, competition fees, traveling internationally abroad.
Now Don Anthony and his after-school program are teaching more inner-city kids. Now we have Terrence Lasker teaching more inner-city kids. Now all the European coaches are realizing, wow, we get all these inner-city elite coaches and we can build a better fencing nation together. So that is my dream, that is my goal, and I believe everyone can see the benefit of us teaching collectively.
It was big impact because I see in Peter Westbrook Foundation growth, and a lot of fencers from this foundation are on top now, in top 16, and they doing incredible international results.
Some of these young athletes have already eclipsed their teachers and coaches to take their own place on the world stage, but they do not forget where they've come from and who they have to thank for their success.
We always had hopes and aspirations of just becoming great fencers. And because we saw Peter, we saw Don Anthony, we saw Mikhail Sankofa, we just wanted to be like them. And it ends up, all right, we finally get there, and then now we're taking like a step further, and suddenly we're on TV sets.
Aki Spencerell, my partner in crime. Aki, I don't want to like digress too much, but he truly is, I consider him like a brother, where our careers have pretty much moved in parallel. And if it wasn't for him, I would have quit a long time ago, just because we would run into so many roadblocks going to European World Cups, and he always allowed me to know that, you know, there's light at the end of the tunnel, and we're gonna do this. And we did it together, making the Olympics.
Even to this day, after 16 years of fencing, I feel like there's something else that I have to accomplish each day, each practice. So I'm always learning, and if you're always learning something, I guess you can never stop learning.
Funny that you asked that question about Tyrone Simmons. He called me on the phone and said, Pete, I'm flying down from Detroit to see your program. I says, why? Why do I owe this honor to? He said, because I want to start a fencing program for inner city youth, and I know you're so successful. I want to see how you do it and copy from the best emulated in Detroit. So I see now the fencing organization that we have is not just helping our children, but so many other coaches.
You always have to keep your cup half empty, so to speak. Nobody knows everything, and like the world, we're always evolving.
As these African-American fencers go forward, the influence of black blades will rise to even greater heights, not only dominating the world of competitive fencing, but creating new opportunities and new legacies for the next generation and beyond.